host, John Quinones. What? I mean, I, I love that man's voice. I grew up watching that man on television, and I can't believe I got to talk to him. These kind of episodes, they're like pinch me moments. I just respect that man so much. So it was just an honor to speak to him and go check out his show. What would you do? And now let's get on to even more important stuff. And that's, of course, Tamra Judge. And I guess we can start by saying I went and saw my therapist today, and she has diagnosed me as having IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. No, 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 nothing like that. In fact, I know through therapy, because I go to therapy, that a diagnosis is very it's a process. It doesn't just happen in one session. And I think that's one of the many things that got Tamra Judge in trouble today. Tamra Judge, of course, you know, doing the Lord's work on season 18 of Real Housewives of Orange County. She's gotten herself into a lot of hot water already this season, going really hard on Shannon, kind of buddying up to Alexis Bellino. She was just on So Bad It's Good a couple of weeks ago. She did some kind of laser thing on her face that made her look like Shrek for a minute. I mean, she looks great now. We knew she would, but she was posting doing that. I mean, she's doing a lot. She had a cease and desist sent to her by Ryan Boyajian, Jen Pedranti's fiance, just a couple of weeks ago. So it has been a wild year for Tamra Judge. Now, I do want to point out Tamra has one of the most successful reality show podcasts out there, the Twats Pod, the T2s and a T two, the two T's to T to two. Sorry, this is a serious story, and I'm the two T's in a pod. Her and Freddie Mellencamp, they do this podcast, and it's really really successful, right? So you would think everything's coming up Tamra, because she is really at the zenith of her popularity and notoriety, I guess you could say, as well. So my day started off as I remember just waking up, not wanting to have woken up and going, oh, this again. And then I scroll through my Daily Mail, my page six, just like your parents would, the paper of note back in the day, and the Daily Mail and page six are my paper of note. And I open it up, and I'm hit with this page six headline: Tamra Judge, 57, discovers she's on the autism spectrum during first therapy session. Now, I had not had my coffee yet. And even then, even without the coffee, I was like, wow, something's afoot here. Something's amiss, because I just know from therapy, it was the first therapy session that kind of stuck out in my mind, because that's impossible to diagnose in one therapy session. There are a lot of testing that goes into diagnoses for anything, but especially the autism spectrum. Now, I do want to speak directly to people with autism right now, people that are on the spectrum, parents that have children that are on the spectrum. I know this is such a sensitive topic, and I know that this has angered a lot of people. And I want to I want to say I'm aware of that. I'm going to try to talk about this with a little bit or a lot of sensitivity, because I know, I know that it's a really hard issue to have spoken about by people that are not medical professionals, which I am not one. So I will be reading you direct quotes from these articles or Tamra's DMs, and I'll be throwing in some of my own opinion, but I also want to obviously let you know, and you already know, you're like, Ryan, you don't need it. We know you're not a medical professional. But yeah, something was odd. So I continue to read the article, and it says Tamra Judge, quote, found out something pretty big during her first therapy session. Dude, I didn't get anything out of my first therapy session. I was just having to, I barely got, in my 20s. I was like, oh, we have so much longer to go. The first session, I was like, you found this out during the first session? Quote, I am on the spectrum, the Real Housewives of Orange County star told her two T's in a pod co-host Teddi Mellencamp in Monday's episode, referring to autism spectrum disorder. She went on to say that, quote, working through trauma has been her, quote, biggest problem. She explained, I just thought that things were black and white to me. I grew up with a family that didn't have a lot of empathy or love or whatever, so that just transpired onto my adult life. But after talking and going through everything in my emotions, and I have a hard time with empathy and feeling other people's feelings, there's a reason why. The longtime housewife linked the disorder to her social anxiety, confessing, how I make it through the show is by drinking. She predicted a rough few months ahead as she undergoes a lot of huge changes in her life. At the time of the recording, Judge had not told her husband, Eddie Judge, her news and promised to share more with Mellencamp, 43, off camera. I hate articles that have to attach ages. I mean, not like, but it's especially for women. Like, did I need to know that Mellencamp was 43? Like, what did that? Oh, 43. That really adds perspective to this story. Podcast listeners praised the courageous Bravo celebrity via Instagram for sharing her story publicly. One fan gushed, amazing to share such a private self discovery experience through therapy with the public. This is a very nice article towards Tamra because it was not all sunshine and roses in terms of social media response. So let's just take this for what it is right here and some things that had went through my head initially. Is that the things that she's talking about of I grew up with a family that didn't have a lot of empathy or love or whatever, and then saying after talking and going through everything in my emotions, I have a hard time with empathy and feeling other people's feelings. There's a reason why. Now, I want you to keep in mind something that I have said since the beginning of this podcast. Two things can be true at once, right? And also one thing can be true and one thing is cannot be true, and it's okay. Like, like the thing that I think is important here that Tamra needs to really work on, and that I think therapy will be so helpful for, is talking about her feelings and about feeling other people's feelings. Like, this is the stuff, having empathy for other people and realizing that that is not your strong suit. That is such a perfect topic to work through with a therapist. But it doesn't mean that you're autistic or you're on the spectrum. There's a huge difference there. And I know many people that are on the spectrum or have autism that can have empathy for other people. It's not this blanket, oh, you're on the spectrum, that means you have zero empathy. No, 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 no. That's not it at all. And I think you guys know that. So I guess I'm going to be a little different than a lot of takes I've seen today that really came from this place of anger. And I understand that because I think Tamra, as a character on these shows, and sometimes how she behaves behind the scenes makes a lot of people angry. And it's given us some really amazing housewife moments, but sometimes it gets her in situations like these, which I think she immediately started to realize this was a mistake. And I think it's always a good rule of thumb, and I'm speaking for myself as well. When you have a public platform and you are a slave to the grind of like putting out content, you kind of sometimes fall into this habit or bad habit of saying, "Oh, this interesting thing just happened to me. It can be content. I can throw it out there. I can monetize it." Not that I'm saying she's monetizing it, but you kind of get this sense of like, I'm gonna share everything. I'm just gonna put it all out there. Yeah, you know what? I just got out of therapy. I'm gonna share everything that I just learned. Now, I would also hope that Tamara's therapist from this point on has some ground rules and saying, listen, what we talk about here, let's keep this for now between us or between you and your family and your close friends and not a podcast audience. Because, and this isn't standing up for Tamara, but I will say, when you invite, close to 1 million people in on these really private conversations with alleged medical professionals, that's not going to usually be a good thing. It's going to disrupt your process, your healing journey, as Whitney would call it. And that's the important work that needs to be done behind closed doors. When you kind of, throw it out there before you fully understand it yourself, before you even tell your husband, that's not good. It's not good. And it's not, and not even touching the fact that she got so many things wrong in regards to how she understands it or how it was explained to her. But I can't imagine the medical professional that told her this. There's got to be some miscommunication happening, because that seems very dangerous of Tamara's therapist to say something like this so early in them working together. But that is not the end of the story. Oh no, it never is with Housewives. So one of my friends, Melissa Reich, you know her from Your Bish Therapist podcast, who I like very much. She's been on my show. I've been on her show a couple of times. I think she comes from a place of compassion, empathy. I think we're a little similar in that way, except that she's smart, you guys. She's smart. She kind of knows how to talk about human emotions, human behavior, and the human condition in such a way that you kind of understand it, and it doesn't seem nearly as scary. So she had made this original post that has now been taken down. She wrote, here are my thoughts about this in regards to the Tamra Teddy clip. One, she says, no one is diagnosed on the ASD spectrum after one session. Okay, so that's important. Two, Tamra said she lacks empathy and equates this to ASD, which is abhorrently incorrect. People who are neurodivergent have empathy and feel emotions deeply, even if it is unable to be traditionally expressed. Three, lack of empathy is indicative of several disorders, specifically with antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, also known as sociopathy. Four, a diagnosis of autism requires a multifaceted assessment that extends far beyond the first session. So that is the post that she initially wrote. She took it down, and I get, you can probably guess as to why she took it down, or maybe who reached out to her that led her to take it down. I will say in these situations with housewives, two wrongs don't make a right. At this point, um, Tamra knows the game, and she plays it really, really well, or she plays it like a power forward. She's like charging all the time. She's going for that ball. She's going to dominate, dominate, dominate. And I think she saw some of the negative reaction and really, kind of shared her feelings and maybe a little bit of her anger with some of these people to the point where they're like, this isn't worth it. This isn't worth it. But I would hope that Tamara can realize after, sleeping on it, that this is an important conversation, and that just because you were really wrong in dealing with it in the way that you did in terms of talking about it and getting some key points incorrect, it could be this great point of conversation. We don't have to be scared of conversation. And also, I said this the other day, we also can make mistakes and say we made mistakes. It doesn't make you any less of a person. Like in some cases, it makes you respect the person even more. So, I mean, doubling and tripling down on something, I just don't think that's a place where healing can start or come from, especially because something obviously happened in this first therapy session, right? Something happened in this first therapy session where Tamara was sharing very real feelings. Like, you don't just go to therapy for fun because it's usually, I hate to break it to you, not fun. So, something had to have brought her there. Something, she's not happy in some facet or many facets of her life, right? So you have to be like, oh, good for you. That's really brave of you to go to therapy. But when you get it, these things kind of wrong, and that's why people, usually are not encouraged to go on TikTok and, start making videos and stuff about their healing journey, because it is so personal that it is bound to upset somebody else because you're going to get something wrong because you're so new to it. And then it's going to discourage you from actually doing the hard work because you're going to potentially equate negativity with reactions like this in terms of you actually doing the work. So it's like you want to encourage anybody to go do the therapy, but you also don't want it to harm or upset other people. And you can really easily not do that by just keeping it off your podcast until you completely understand it. I've fallen into that trap many times myself. I've talked about therapy in here. Or I've said something, oh, my therapist, we were talking about this or that. But my therapist really hasn't diagnosed me with anything except, just the casual run of the mill depression. But even then, I understand how big it all is. Because by the way, when I talk about that, it's big to me because I still don't have a grasp on myself. Even after all of these decades, I still don't necessarily understand how I operate, which doesn't that just blow your mind? Doesn't that just blow your mind? And I think that's why we're attracted to people that are so confident and ballsy, because sometimes we feel like, oh my God, they really seem to know themselves. And what's really disappointing is usually you find out those people are full of shit too. And you're like, oh, you're just acting that you're actually even worse than I am. Oh, I got it. I get it now. I got it. Okay. So, that Melissa post actually really helped me understand things because I think people like her are important to help us common lay people understand what we're dealing with. What is an autism diagnosis? What is on the spectrum? What does that mean? Because these are things that can be these kind of inflection points where we can learn from. And I think you also, unfortunately, with Housewives these days, you have to accept, like I always say, there's the show that we watch that the producers put together, and then there's the show behind the show that plays out on social media. And these ladies are out there being gladiators all day and they're getting into fights that they don't even need to have to get into. And Tamra, you would think because she is so hardcore, when it comes to other cast members or taking care of herself and being really strong in that sense, you think she would be able to take the heat. But, sometimes those people are the most sensitive people of all of us. And maybe that's why they go so hard in the first place because I'm like, man, she's going to be really onto something if she does talk about that lack of empathy. But I will say also, if you watch Tamara on TV, you do see, or at least unless it's acting, you do see her be empathetic. It's just, it's weird when she chooses to be and when she chooses not to be, right? Those are weird. I'm always like, wait, why? Because you're crying over your friend over here, but over here you're completely upset. I mean, that's the range of human emotions. So I'm not saying that there's not a look for autism or on the spectrum. There's not like, that person has the on the spectrum look. No, that's not. There's so many high functioning on the spectrum people. There are people that you wouldn't think twice about, nor that we should think twice about it, because at the end of the day, they're all just people like we are. We are all the same. It's just that they have to go through their life with a little bit of different recognition for how they live it. And of course, there's high functioning and then there's not. And those are two different scenarios as well. So it's not one of those things that I think people could be like, I called it in season 9, Tamra on the spectrum. No, 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 no. It's all ridiculous. So this all started happening. And then People Magazine, good old People Magazine, and I love People Magazine. This is a byline. You had Vanessa Etienne and our friend Dave Quinn co-writing this article. And it says, Tamra Judge claps back at critics after being told she's on the spectrum. Quote, this isn't some storyline. I hated the way this article was titled because it was frustrating because this is what I'm talking about. I think it needs to, if you say this and you say something incorrectly on your podcast, you don't then double down twice as hard, and we don't need claps back. We're talking about a serious discussion. Even if we take Tamra out of it, it's a serious discussion that can really help people. This isn't a housewife storyline, right? Like even this headline says, this isn't some storyline. No, it isn't. So clap back. We don't need to clap back. People are going to, be upset because it personally means something to them. People are going to be upset because that's what we do nowadays. We're just upset. And people are going to be upset because that's what we're trained to do because of Housewives, because that's what we see week in, week out. And sometimes we look at these women as characters like, oh, you yell at Shannon every week. We're going to yell at you every week. But also, Tamra did play a huge part in this. So this article is, very favorably written towards Tamra, but it also has quotes from her Instagram post that she wrote after all this blew up. So it says the Real Housewives of Orange County star spoke to people and clarified her condition after sharing the personal news. Quote, I started therapy because this year has been really hard on me. I started feeling really insecure. I was having intrusive thoughts and I didn't want to leave my house unless I had to. I even considered just being admitted into a mental health facility. Okay, so that paragraph, really important, right? Like I did a 2-hour Patreon today, and I talked about this a lot, but I also covered season 1 Vanderpump Rules Secrets Revealed episode. So by the way, I know this is a little plug for me, but if you like Vanderpump Rules, I've now recapped the entire first season over on the Patreon, patreon.com/so bad it's good. But the Secrets Revealed episode on the first season is so funny and it's so infuriating because I was talking to the Patreon earlier and I said, man, it makes me sad sometimes because this was shot in 2013 and you see how these characters, for the most part, have not changed in so many ways. Like I just talked to Jax on the red carpet the other day and Jax is talking literally the same things in that Secrets Revealed episode that he did to me on that red carpet. And you want to have empathy and compassion for everybody, but it's sometimes hard when you actually have video evidence of these people from year in, year out, right? And Tamra as well. But I thought that paragraph was really important that Tamra told people. But at the same time, I'm like, oh shit, I've thought every one of these things. This year's been really hard on me. Okay, I started back in therapy. I started feeling really insecure. Oh, that's me. I was having intrusive thoughts. Oh, that's me. I didn't want to leave my house unless I had to. Oh shit, that's me. I even considered just being admitted into a mental health facility. Oh my God. Yes, that's me. I've thought every one of those things this year. Every one of those things. But also, I didn't think, oh, it's hard to it's hard to talk about mental health, right? Because I thought all of those things, but I also talk about it just kind of like, well, my wiring's a little different. Also, I've dealt with a lot of drama and trauma this past year. Obviously with all the stuff that's gone on. I never once thought like, oh, is there something, is there a diagnosis here? I just want to feel better. That's it. She continued, in my conversations with my therapist, who I've known for years, we talked about a lot over the course of 2 hours. First off, 2 hours, cha-ching. 1 hour for me costs a lot. You're paying for 2 hours? The money is good in CBD land. No, I'm joking, but Tamara also is well off. Okay, so this is the part that kind of confused me because in the clip with Teddy, she says, I was at my first therapist appointment and I've got an announcement, right? But here she says, I've known my therapist for years. I'm a little confused because here I was like, is it backtracking? Has this been your therapist for years, even though you said this is my first time going? I hope your therapist is not a friend because that's usually, it's not a great place to start because you want somebody that can have professional bias. And, it's like, oh, here's my therapist, Vicki Gunvalson. Like, no, you want it to be somebody that doesn't know you and your life, somebody that you can actually kind of discover things with. She went on and she told me that many of the things about me, like how I process information, my sensory issues, my social anxiety, my aversion to eye contact with new people, my not wanting to be out of my routine, were all signs of being on the spectrum. So I was trying to think, what is the world? Is she backtracking a little bit? Or did this therapist say, oh, you know what? We might need to like look into further. There's a possibility you could be on the spectrum. And Tamara just kind of ran with that. I was really trying to make sense of this in my mind to try to be really fair because also Tamara is crying in this episode with Teddy. She's actually crying. Now, yes, I know Tamara has been through a lot of, pivots on the show, whether it be her religious awakening where she got baptized. We've seen her go through a lot of different things, the bodybuilding. She's done a lot on this show. So I think that's how another way we're trained in Housewives to kind of take something, spin it, and look at it like, oh, is this smells like a storyline, right? But I also truly believe that Tamara does have these issues in her life and does feel this way. Like I do believe that she's having anxiety, that she's not wanting to go out of her house. I do believe that to be the case. And I also think there's something there that probably is yet to be talked about in her therapy is that she's also drawn to the spotlight and really craves and wants that attention, right? And it's this dangerous tightrope act that she walks because sometimes when she acts really bad, she gets that attention in a negative way, but it's still attention. This is all stuff that I am just completely speculating on. So I want to be very clear about that as well. The People magazine article goes on to say the term being on the spectrum refers to autism spectrum disorder. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, this is a neurological and developmental condition that impacts a person's behavioral, social, and communication patterns with a wide range of symptoms and severity. Tamra notes that on the spectrum is a broad term that she doesn't fully understand. She says her therapist told her that she needs further evaluation. And when she first spoke about her condition on the podcast, my head was spinning from the news. So, yeah, this is like more of the actual story and this is damage control. But yeah, I hope this is the case because the therapist probably just said, oh, we need further evaluation. And Tamara just kind of ran with that because, listen, I'm not standing up for Tamara at all, but I will say when you are in therapy and you hit on something or the therapist suggests something that like almost feels like it's medicine in a good way, that you're like, oh shit, do we have something here? Is this going to help me? Am I going to feel better? And you get so excited about this because you just want to feel better, right? So you're like, oh, do you think that's it? Do you think that's it? But yeah, she kind of ran with it. And I think, once the doctor said further evaluation, she shouldn't have gone on a podcast no matter how she felt. No matter how she felt, Tamara's also a professional enough to know we've seen her withhold things in her own life on this show. So we know she has it in her. Anyway, she continued and said, I had no time to process things or even talk to my family. I was just back at work and I was so emotional, I just blurted it out. Afterwards, my instinct was to have it removed, but I'm used to being so open with everything in my life. I thought against it. Now I wish I had. I just want to take people through the journey with me as I've always done, but I realize now I spoke too soon publicly and that processing this with such an onslaught of negative comments has been horrible. Okay, now this is the part where I wish the quote had been, and I understand people's strong feelings on this because I do understand how serious it is. I wish that quote had been different because the other stuff, I'm like, okay, yeah, even though, like with Tamra, I've suggested, a couple of times now, I wish sometimes she would do a 180 on these ladies and the housewives and just stop reacting, stop yelling, stop doing that because I think it would that's the pivot I want to see her make because it would really throw these ladies' hair back. They'd be like, whoa, wait, why is Tamra just being completely calm? Why is she just listening without reacting? Maybe do the thing that goes against your natural instincts. It's like that one episode of Seinfeld when George is like, listen, I've been doing my life, I've been making decisions for my life, my whole life this way, and it's not working out. I am just going to do the opposite of every one of my natural instincts. And everything starts going right for him. So maybe Tamra could play around with that and see if it potentially works. And also, I just hope that when she does, and I hope this doesn't discourage her from this journey, but I hope it's something that she keeps for herself. I think there's room that she could keep this for herself and really focus on this. And it's a lot of hard work and really have her family surround her with a lot of love and her friends and maybe keep this off TV for now until she does understand it, right? Until she has an official diagnosis. Because I think with somebody with that big of a platform that she has, it can be really discouraging for other people depending on how she's speaking about it. Like today, you don't want to do more damage than you do good, right? Anyway, she continues, if you know me, you know I don't like to look weak or play the victim. I also hate labels just as much as I hate excuses, but I'm working on myself, not a TV show, to be a better person for me and the people around me. This isn't some storyline, it's my real life. I have past trauma that is deep and painful. This is something I've suppressed for 15 years, but I'm finally getting the help I need, and I'm proud of myself for that, as she should be. That's not the issue. And by the way, I don't doubt her trauma. We've seen her divorce. We've seen her relationships with her children that we know she goes through. We've seen all of these things on the show. So I have no doubt that they're there. I mean, I don't even know the severity of it, but I really do. I mean, she was a young mom. There have been so many things. And look, and that's why I think she fights so hard because she's fought past all of these places that usually would take people under, and she's kind of come back every time stronger, which is something to be so proud of. But even when everything is going right for you in your life in certain capacities, you still might feel an emptiness inside. You still might not feel good. And that can really knock you on your ass too. I feel that a lot, man. Today I had a moment where I was like, man, there's so many things that are going good. And I feel exhausted and I feel like I'm at my breaking point sometimes. And then you beat yourself up for that because you feel like that. And you're like, why, I can point to 30 things that are good, but why am I feeling this way? It's really frustrating, the human experience. You guys know, you deal with it too. Anyways, she says, although she's appreciative of those who have reached out, she thinks it's best to be more private moving forward until she's in a better mental space. I said space. My mental health is just not strong enough where I can be judged and hated on right now. Yes, I'm admitting that I'm weak, and I'm okay with that right now. After revealing the health update on her podcast, Judge told Mellencamp that it's going to be a rough few months as she makes a lot of huge changes in her life. Um, this whole thing, I just wish she had left out the on the spectrum part. I wish, because all of this other stuff is real. All this, I'm not saying the on the spectrum isn't, but we don't know that yet. And she's admitting that we don't officially know that yet. But this other stuff is so real and it's so relatable. This is such an important conversation. I also think this is and you guys have heard me talk about it. This is where, like Rachel Leviss, the artist formerly known as Raquel, that's where she got it, where I started kind of like, because I was so impressed that she went to a mental health facility for all those months, because I'm like, you turned down the show and you bet on yourself. You are really working this system and you're doing the hard work. But then when you come out and you just start a podcast where it's like kind of under the guise of mental health, but then it ends up being a Vanderpump Rules like recap podcast or talking about your feelings about the cast, it kind of takes away the power of that journey. And also, it's hard to really speak about your journey when you are still on it. Like you might not be the best spokesperson for that at that time. But here, right here, if you take out the on the spectrum and all that stuff, there's a message here. There's this like, even the I'm admitting I'm weak. I'm okay with that right now. It's okay to be weak. I've spent my entire life being weak. I mean, I don't love it, but it's okay. It's okay. The bullshit we have in our minds, we just build this stuff up so much. We just create these roadblocks because we think we have to be this certain way. Now, this does not excuse Tamra and how she handles some of these people. Like if you have been on the receiving end of Tamra Judge being mad at you, and I'm not even talking about if you're a housewife, I'm talking about if you're a content creator. And Tamra doesn't need my advice, nor is she looking for my advice, but I will continue to give it because, listen, I have a podcast. It could be worse. I could just be putting this on TikTok. I would just say, you know, realize that we're all in the same boat, and also don't come after content creators so hard. You know the game. This is what we do. You do it too. You do it on your podcast. You say strong opinions. You do it on your show and you do it on your podcast. Other people are going to do that as well. And they're going to do that about you because you are on this show, because that's what we do. And it helps the show. It's this really sorted ecosystem that you're in and that you benefit from. So when people do, or, especially your bitch therapist who's trying to genuinely help people, and of course people, Melissa wants people to listen to her show and check her out. And I recommend it as well. So of course that's there. And, but you don't come down on somebody for trying to help. Like nowhere in Melissa's post was she like that bitch, how dare, like, listen, none of that was there, but it is important to get these things right when we're talking about something so serious. And that doesn't mean, I just think everything with Tamara, she takes it as such a deeply personal insult when we watch her deeply personally insult people all over the place. And like I said at the very beginning of this rant, the two wrongs don't make a right. And I just hope she would look at that. And I hope I also don't wake up to any kind of nasty DMs from Tamara. Tamara, I'm with you. Hey, listen, I got to go to therapy tomorrow. I'm in the same boat as you. It sucks. Heavy lifting sucks, but do it, and bet on yourself, but you don't need it. You already got such a good thing going. You don't need to walk people through this journey until you understand it. I mean, even Jax Taylor, Jax speaks so eloquently when I spoke to him on the red carpet about his mental health struggles, but that doesn't mean he's even got it all figured out, because he doesn't. Most of us don't. It is a lifelong battle. This is my Forrest Gump moment, and that's all I got to say about that. Whoo! Did I leave out anything? I think I got it pretty much. I think I got what I needed to say. Listen, there are so many other pop culture stories, but we'll put that in Thursday's episode. We got a couple other guests, and then we're going to end the week with the OC recap. Tamra, hope you have a good episode this week. We'll have the Salt Lake recap. We got a new episode of Salt Lake tomorrow night, which I'm excited about. I watched RHOC tonight. Did you check out Bravo We're Black? They were on the podcast today. And then I did my solo 1000th episode on Monday. So please check those out. And you guys, I'm talking to you, you baddies. You go out today and you just stop somebody on the street and you say, hey, bud, you better listen to So Bad It's Good. Maybe don't do that aggressive. Maybe do like a smile or something. But remember, recommend the show, pass it around. Like set up a campfire and just get a bunch of friends, just listen to it. It's a family show. But I really do appreciate everybody that recommends this show, everybody that makes social media posts about this show. I don't get to see it half the time anymore, but it really does help. This is still word of mouth, this show. It's just me and you. And it's always great to get new people listening and hopping on board. And there are a billion other things that we still have to talk about. So tune in every day. And if you need more, go on over to the Patreon because I thought I had some pretty silly, funny moments in that Vanderpump Rules recap. If you need something funny. But that's it, you guys. I hope you have the best Wednesday ever. I'll be on Jeff Lewis on Thursday with Sutton Strack and Crystal Kung Minkoff. And then the next week I'll be on with another. Anyways, I can't tell. I'll talk about that more later. That's it, you guys. Have a great Wednesday. And man, John Quinones, can you believe we had him on the show? Whew, look at me, Mom. John Quinones. Bye, guys.